Hello, you're very welcome along. Usually around this time of year here on Shels TV we would do a preview of the upcoming season with our Shels captains. It's a bit of a different one this time around. Luke Byrne joins me. Luke, people will have seen by now the news you shared, your career, you've decided to hang up the boots.
Yeah, Darren, it's obviously been a very tough decision, but it's one that's been coming a while. It's not been a snap decision on my part. It's been something that I've been considering for a few months. And after speaking to people close to me, people that I very much listen to and respect, I've decided it is the right time for me to hang up the boots and call it a day. And it's strange saying it out loud, but it's a decision that's taken a while. Like I said, I've put a lot of thought into it, and I know it's the right one.
How much was choice and how much was kind of necessity? How much was the body telling you you've gone as far as you can go?
Yeah, look, ideally I would have played for another 5-6 years. That was always the plan when I was younger. I would have loved to have played till I'm 35, 6. But the reality is, with the injuries I've had, the operations I've had, and just the general wear and tear that I've kind of suffered throughout the last couple of years, I can't perform at the level that I need to, that the team deserves, and that's, I suppose, required to play, at a very ambitious team. So, all in all, it's just the right time for me to call it a day. Did
you know when you stepped on the field in Drogheda that might be curtains?
I was trying not to think about that, because obviously there was so much riding on the game, and the game was, ebbing and flowing, and we were listening to results around the league, so it was such a vital night for us. But I suppose when I was on the pitch, it was a little bit of a party atmosphere. We were 2 goals up, and the crowd gave me a lovely reception. But no, it didn't cross my mind. On the bus back after, I was chatting to Boydie, and I said, that could have been my last dance there. So as it turns out, it was, and it's, I think, the perfect night and to go out on. As it turned out, we qualified for Europe, and that's a nice note to leave it on, I think.
People might be a bit surprised that you've taken the decision to hang up the boots now, because even in those games where you featured, and it's probably not as often as you would have liked to feature this season, but you still looked like Luke Byrne of old. You still were able to put those performances in. Why have you decided, when you still looked like when you were playing you could do it, why now?
I mean, obviously I appreciate it, but personally I would have felt that my performance levels dropped, particularly maybe midway through the season. I played 20 games this year, and I probably played 15 of the first 20 and maybe 5 of the last 20, and that was for a reason. Obviously the boys who were playing extremely well, but I just wasn't getting to the levels in training that I used to. And I suppose looking forward, there's the risk that an off-season and a pre-season, that I come back in even worse condition. So, it's a number of things really. I still felt I had some good performances this year, but yourself when you're not hitting the levels you used to. And look, the manager is as honest as they come, and I would have spoke to him throughout the year, and I knew why I wasn't playing, and I told him I agreed with him. I wouldn't have played me either. So he's obviously one of the people I've spoke to since the season finished. And look, he won't mind me saying, he didn't try and convince me to stay and continue playing. He knows what I've gone through, what I've put the body through to try and keep playing even this year. And I think, having suffered injuries himself, he knows that a player knows himself when his body is done, and I've come to that point, and he was very supportive then when I said it to him.
It was something the manager would often reference throughout the season, that if people could only see what Luke Byrne puts his body through to even turn up at Tolka on a Friday night. Now that it's over, can you give us a bit of an insight into what actually a match week was like for you? Yeah,
I mean, again, I would always kind of preface it with the fact that what I go through probably doesn't compare to what people in other walks of life go through in other jobs. But as a footballer, to get to a Friday night and try and perform, it was training a lot less than the rest of the group, probably training 1.5 sessions a week, sometimes 2. A lot of gym work to try and keep the legs strong, because what would happen is my knees would fill up with fluid. I'd have to go and get them drained, get them aspirated, and part of that vicious cycle is that you can't hold on to muscle, and you lose the bulk in your quad. But again, part of that cycle is your knee needs as much bulk and strength in the quad as possible. So I was just constantly fighting against that, and then you would get steroid injections, painkilling injections, load up on Difene, taking Difene before, after breakfast, going to bed with Difene, probably taking too many, to be honest, which then caused like stomach problems and stuff. So look, it's part of it. I'm not the first and I won't be the last player who's had to do stuff like that, but for the last couple of years it's been, it's dominated my life. And when you're doing all that and you still feel like you can't perform properly and you're still in pain all the time, you do have to weigh the two things up. And that's kind of been the to and fro in my mind for the last couple of months, and I've got to the point where I've made the decision, like I said, and I know it's the right one. And
you've had to do this, like this is not a new routine in the last few weeks of the season. This is probably something you've done for the last year or two, is it?
Yeah, probably, the last 2.5 years, I'd say. Like I nearly retired in January this year. I came back after last season and I couldn't do pre-season. Couldn't kick a ball. I remember after training one day, just walking in off the pitch mid-session because I just couldn't kick a ball. And Dave McAllister saw how much I was hurting, and he brought me out for a coffee after training, and we spoke about it, and Joey joined us and we said, okay, let's give this 3-4 weeks. If I'm still in the same condition, but then, the decision is probably taken out of my hands at that stage. But I just went away for about a month, and just the manager left me to it. Got a great plan with Mero and our Dr. Anthony, and it worked. It got me, back. I think I literally got back the week before the season started, and then I ended up playing the first number of games. So I'm thankful I did give it one more roll of the dice at that time, because obviously I got to be part of this season, which is a very memorable season.
Even the Shels chapter of your career, I don't want to speak for you, but it does seem like one you reflect very fondly on. Does that even feel a bit like bonus territory? Because coming out after Rovers, I know you'd mentioned one or two people that advised you even then to retire.
Yeah, it was something that was said to me. I was probably 24, 25 at the time. I'd had like 5 operations and I just couldn't stay fit really, and most of them were significant operations where I was out for 6 months, a year. And it was probably, listening to people saying I was done that motivated me to keep going. But I was definitely at a crossroads coming out of full-time football. I'd been full-time since I left school. Even when I was in school, really, 6th year, I was a full-time footballer, and I just felt I wasn't done. So I hung around that off-season. Was rehabbing an ankle injury from an operation, and I was waiting on a call from Ian Morris, which eventually came, and I came in on trial actually. So I came in and did my best really just to impress him and get one last chance, and thankfully Ian put his faith in me, signed me, and just kind of never looked back really.
So it's a 12-year professional football career starting at 18. As you hang up the boots now, obviously people look at the numbers, the appearances, everything else, but there's some other staggering numbers, and it's the amount of operations you've had to endure.
Yeah, 5. I mean, look, again, I know people out there have had more. This is just my career, my body, what's happened to me, and yeah, it's quite a large number, and they were all at the front end of my career, so I lost a lot of momentum when I was younger, but I wouldn't actually change any of it. It makes you stronger as a person, makes you a stronger character. And like someone said to me when I was younger, and I've said this before, no player goes through their career like that, just plain sailing, going from high to high. There's always lows and dips, and injuries were mine, and I honestly wouldn't change them. It's made me who I am. So they're all a part of life, all a part of the game.
It's mad to think that the impact you've had over the last few years. You were the last person, I think you said, signed by Ian Morris in 2019.
Last or second last, definitely, yeah, because I came in and everyone had their squad numbers, their gear, and I was just on trial, trying to prove my fitness. Like my first day on trial basically was the first day I was back training after doing my ankle the previous summer. So, I was up against it time-wise, but thankfully the ankle had healed. I'd worked hard over the off-season to get it ready, and Ian threw me a bone, and I just took it,
That move then, obviously you'd started your career as a left back. That move into centre half, Do you think that was a big part of prolonging the career?
Yeah, definitely. Look, I wouldn't have, maybe back then, possibly, Ian might say otherwise, but definitely beyond that year, I wouldn't have had the dynamism to play left back. Just, I think, as a result of the injuries, So centre back was the logical move, but it was always kind of, even though I was playing with my mates when I was younger, I always used to end up in there. It's just where I like to play, middle of the pitch, see the game. Got a real enjoyment out of heading the ball and tackling people and blocking shots, and it's definitely, brought me on as a player. I think I was a better centre half than I ever was a left back, and it's definitely got me those extra few years, I would say.
As a kid, obviously Shels was this big club when you were growing up. They were playing in Europe, they were winning leagues. You get there in 2019 and it's probably in a bit of a sad, sorry state. It's bounced around the first division, finishing middle or towards the bottom of the first division at times. What attracts you to Shels, and how different was it to the club that you would have seen growing up?
Yeah, it's the first League of Ireland ground I ever went to. My dad brought me and my brother and a couple of mates to a Shels Cork game when I was, I can't be sure, I'd say I was just 8 or 9 years of age. So that was my first experience of League of Ireland football, and I was on the far side in the Riverside stand, and the stadium was full, and I thought it was amazing. But then when I signed, I'd played against Shels in the Premier Division a couple of times while I was at Bows and Rovers, but they spent the majority of my career in the first division, and it wouldn't just be me, it'd be players around the league, but always have I looked at Shels and thought, like, that's just a big club waiting to be woken up a little bit. And it was always a shame it was in the first division. But then, when you arrive and the crowds are quite low, and it's, I suppose, I don't know, I suppose you felt the responsibility to get the club back to where we all felt it should be. And that team that year, we did our job in getting the club up, and draw it away last game of the season, still one of the best nights of my life. I'll never forget that one. And that, I think, that night was the real eye-opener as to how big the club was and what it meant to everyone to get it back to the Premier Division. When
you look at career highlights, is that night right up there with them?
Yeah, it's got to be, it's probably number one, to be fair. Yeah, I'd say it was number one. Just seeing what it meant to so many people. As players, the fans are here long before you, long after you, but to see what it meant to those people and the people who have been involved in the club for so long and seen it struggle, that just gave you a really good sense of what you'd achieved, and it was an honour to be part of it, really.
Did you buy into the vision straight away? Because obviously there's lofty ambitions and this talk of we're going to get Shels back to where they belong. There's been plenty of false dawns and broken promises and lies over the years to fans and players. Did you buy straight into that when you got there? Yeah,
I did. I came in after Andrew Doyle had obviously come in, and I'd heard, even when I was at Rovers, you just hear that Shels are potentially back on the up again. And then Ian Morris took the job, and I could see he was getting a good squad together. And so by the time I come in, we had signed some really good players, some established Premier Division players. And then when I got to meet him and speak to him, I knew he wasn't here just to tip along. He's a motivated guy. He's a very hard-working man, and I knew he was coming in with the ambition to win the league. And you've got to trust in people, when you meet the likes of Dave O'Connor and Ian Morris, when you're going to sign, you might have conversations about the plans for the club, but you've got to trust in those people. And me personally, I did, and I think that they all stuck to their word. Dave O'Connor is one of the most important people, if not the most important in my mind, in Shels, I suppose, revival the last few years, from where I'm standing. And I know he had a big part to play and get me here as well, so he's another person who I think deserves huge credit for the last few years. 2020 comes along, Shels are back. I remember that first home game. We start obviously away to Cork, and Gilduff scores, and it's brilliant. It feels like Shels are back. And then even the game against Dundalk, to see Tolka started to catch a bit of life, the game against Pats as well, the 1-0 win. It felt like the club had completely transformed in 12 months. As a player, is that something that kind of resonated with you, that it was starting to come to fruition? Absolutely, yeah. And like you said, it just kind of happened so fast, I remember playing in big games at the end of the 2019 season at home, and the crowd wouldn't have been huge. And then fast forward, what's probably only 5 or 6 matches. Obviously, it's the promotion and the off-season and so on, but Tolka's full. The rain's coming down, the floodlights are on. It was just a great place to be before COVID hit, and But that was short-lived, I suppose, because of how the rest of the season turned out.
We get to how the rest of the season turned out, but the story did have a happy end because 2021 ends with promotion yet again. I mean, it's probably a bit of a weird one for Ian because he departs, but as someone who has been part of two teams that got Shels back to the Premier, Ian Morris's, I guess, his role in your career, is it an important one?
Absolutely, yeah. And he's still someone I'd speak to now and listen to. He's still there to offer me advice. And he has a huge role to play. And, obviously he's won the league twice as a manager in his first 3 years even managing. And me personally, he did take a chance on me. I was, probably a player not a lot of clubs wanted to touch because of my injuries at the time. And he brought me in and played me in a new position. Probably had patience with me, the first 5-6 games. I didn't start well that season, making a lot of mistakes. But he stuck with me, and I'd like to think I repaid him. But yeah, he's a great man, and I would definitely say I owe him a lot.
Fast forward then, 2022, the manager comes in. You're very familiar with him. Obviously, you worked with him with the Shels under-17s. Is it true you had a role in bringing him to Shels?
Yeah, I mean, it was during COVID at some stage, and I was speaking to him. I think he had just taken a role with Stephen Kenny, and he told me he'd be moving home and leaving Celtic, and he wanted to coach day to day because the nature of international football, he'd be between camps, and he wanted to be out on the pitch coaching. So he kind of floated the idea, and obviously I was delighted that he'd be interested. So I spoke to people in the club, and they found a role for him with the under-17s, which was it was great to get him in. I think even though he came in the academy at the time and we were coming off the back of COVID, he helped to raise standards straight away himself. Stephen Mahern as well. The two of them really, I thought, Stephen bought in totally to what the manager wanted to do with the 17s and turn it into like a professional environment. And extra gear, extra nights on training pitches was never an issue, and that's just who the manager is. He demands high standards. He does everything properly how he sees it, and he'll make no apologies for it, and that's why he's been so successful. But I suppose that was the start of him coming into Shels. When
he takes that top job in November 2021, could you have imagined the impact he would have had in the space of time he's been at the club? It's really extraordinary.
Yeah, no, I can. I mean, as amazing as it's been, it doesn't surprise me at all, and I know he's going to achieve a lot more as the manager of this football club. I see the manager going on to win leagues at this football club. That's how good he is, to be honest. What else do you add to it? He's just, his attention to detail, his professionalism, he's just relentless in what he does every day. He does not stop working. Runs himself into the ground to improve the team, look after the players, the staff, and just try and progress and always want more. And even sometimes we'd get a great result, and we'd you might come into training the next week and think that naturally as a player you might think you might be coming into a more relaxed week. If anything, the manager's intensity goes up, and we all learned that very quickly, and that's the right way to be. There's no room for complacency. And that's why I just have no doubts here and beyond he's going to have success.
Where is this club set up to go from here?
I see this club going on to compete for leagues soon. That's the truth. I see the improvement in the last 2 years. We finished fourth, 2-3 points off second, and we definitely left points behind this season. I know every team will say that, but a lot of those draws, we should have won those games, and you don't know where you end up. And that's also contending with major injury problems. So, I mean, if the manager's backed and is given time and resources, I have no problem saying I can see him in the league for this club. That's the belief I'd have in him.
What's your time at Shels meant to you? I mean, it's obviously been it's where you've ended your career. What does that spell in your career? You've Bows, you've Rovers, you've Shels. What's it mean to you?
That's the best period of my life, 100%. Even through the lows, there was obviously that one dark season where we've gone down. But it's done a lot for me, Darren, in my life. It's when when I started out playing football, you know, you look at players like, I would have looked at the likes of Paul Scholes and stuff and seen his affiliation with Man United, and as a young player I always wanted to feel like I had a club that was my club, you know. I wanted that in my career and I felt I got that here. Met some friends for life, improved as a player. I think, you know, captain the club is my greatest achievement. So I can't, you know, I'll never repay Shels for what they did for me, but I always tried, and I'm going to look back on it fondly forever.
What are your highlights? What are you most proudest of?
You know, the game went horribly wrong, the cup final, but walking out in the Aviva with 35,000 and as the captain of Shels, waving up to my family and waving up to my mates behind the goal, that's, you know, that's the stuff you dream of, really. And I still remember that day fondly. You know, you win games of football, you lose them. That day we didn't show up, but as a whole, that is a highlight. No problem saying it. Winning the 2 leagues, you know, even though I won the second one, you know, I was the captain for the second one, it's the first one that probably means more. Just, you were there that night in Drogheda, it just felt different. You know, what else? There's loads, you know, even one-off games, you know, winning Dublin derbies, you don't forget those ones in a hurry, but they're probably the few that stand out.
One of the, I guess, big things that has changed in the club in the last few years is it feels like more like a club instead of just a team. Like, it doesn't feel like everything hinges on what happens on the 90 minutes on Friday night. Like, in terms of the rest of your career, from where you started to where you are now, does it feel like you've properly become embedded and part of the fabric of it? Yeah,
I do feel like that, yeah. It's probably, you know, probably only feel like that because people like yourself and other people around the club would say it to me. That's, you know, when real Shelbourne people who've been there their whole lives say it to you, well, that's when you start to believe it, you know. But regardless of whether I did or didn't, I just tried to give everything I had in my time at Shels. Every game, just tried to leave it all out there, really. And if that gets you, you know, a bit more respect amongst the fan base, and, you know, people, you know, see what it means to you, and that means that you've become a part of the club, but then, you know, I'd be very proud to be considered one of them. So that's just how I approach it, how I approach my career, and how I approach football, and how I approach my time at Shels.
The manager said at the end of the game in Drogheda that he'll either be in the dugout or in the Riverside next season. We know he'll be in the dugout, and that was news that was welcomed and probably brought delight to Shels fans. It's probably too soon to ask you where you see yourself next season, and if you don't want to ask or answer it, that's fair enough.
Yeah, look, I don't know. It's the truth. I don't know. I always said I would never play anywhere else, so I'm true to that. I won't play anywhere else, obviously, now that I'm retired. But look, I want to go into coaching. I want to work in football clubs. You know, football is my passion. I feel like I've got experiences and skills that I can offer to this club, other clubs. So, you know, where I'll end up, I don't know, but I'll take my time and, again, speak to people around me and make the right decision.
Thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Not to speak on behalf of Shels fans, but I think you wore your heart on your sleeve. You represented the club with incredible pride and distinction. I think you'll be a fondly remembered Red for everything. Thank you for everything you did on and off the pitch as a player. It meant the world to Shels fans.
Thank you, Darren. And yeah, thanks to everybody who's played a part in my time at Shels. Every single person I've come across, you know, has made an impact on me, whether they know it or not. And you know, I'm not going anywhere. I'll still be, I'm sure, at games next season, and a Shels fan now for life. And it was a great honour to represent the club, and yeah, it's just a big thank you to everybody.
Lukey, up the Reds. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Darren.
That's it?
Yeah, that's it, man. That's a wrap.